Hello, and welcome to the Mississippi Valley Archaeology Center's UWL Archaeology Alumni Podcast. I'm MVAC archaeologist Cindy Kutchik. Through this podcast series, we are connecting with alumni of the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse Archaeology Program, getting a perspective on their experiences in the program, seeing what they did later on, hopefully hearing some great stories along the way, and maybe even getting some advice on what they learned through the archaeology program as well, whether professionally or more recreationally or socially. Today, our guest is Dr. Megan Kasten, joining us all the way from Scotland. Megan attended UWL from 2008 to 2012 and graduated with a BS in Archaeological Studies with a minor in anthropology. And she also earned highest honor as well, getting that degree. She later went on to earn her Master of Letters in Celtic and Viking Archaeology from the University of Glasgow in 2013, and later earned her PhD in archaeology from the University of Glasgow. She is currently working as a postdoctoral research assistant for the ogham project, doing 3D capture and analysis. So sounds like exciting work there. Welcome, Megan. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Cindy. Very excited to have a chat.
Yeah, this is great. So to begin, why did you choose UWL for your undergraduate education?
Well, so what first got me interested in archaeology to begin with was I actually took a trip over to the United Kingdom and got to see Stonehenge for the first time. So ever since that point, it's just kind of been archaeology had been, you have to do all those things in high school where you're like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? Archaeologist, blah, blah, blah. And so when it came time to looking for universities and looking for some that were, a good distance from home, but not too far, La Crosse had one of the only archaeology specific degrees. A lot of them are all kind of housed in anthropology otherwise. And so the fact that La Crosse took archaeology as its kind of main focus, that was a big draw as well. So, still in Wisconsin, 2.5 hours away from home. It's a pretty good distance. So it was great.
And while you were at UWL learning about archaeology, taking all your courses, did you take a field school with UWL and do the local opportunity here?
Yeah, so I did the local field school. I had high expectations because the year prior, our friend Sarah had found the sandstone face, of course. But unfortunately, the year that I took the field school, it was the Great Soybean Massacre instead, as it is now known. But we still learned loads. It was just, I think the highlight of what I found was the base of a projectile point. So that was quite different in comparison to a sandstone carved face. And I think we found about 6 sets of car keys from behind the Burger King as well. So it's quite an interesting
historical archaeology in there.
Yeah, a related material culture from the local car lot, I think. Yeah. But we learned loads about methods and everything. And so it was still a great experience. And then that sort of led on to, or allowed me to work with Fort McCoy after that, which was where I worked a while.
Yeah, and that's a great opportunity that the field school opens up. You get that experience and it really helps you get jobs later on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Did you do any lab work at MVAC or visit MVAC as part of any classes as you were a student?
Yeah, I did. So I can't remember which class it was, but I think it was probably a lab methods course or something like that, where we, learned how to do flotation. You learned how to do the sorting of everything that came out of flotation. And I know I thought at one point that I might have wanted to go into sort of plant biology, sort of that paleobotany and things like that. And so I did a bit of extra volunteer hours, I think, looking at seeds and things under the microscope, and then found out that was not for me. So it was great. I very much appreciated that they allowed us to volunteer and work out what our sort of strengths and were individually. And so it was, yeah, we did quite a bit of volunteering over there. Yeah.
Yeah, and good to be able to suss out, here's what I like, here's kind of what I don't like, and work out what specialties might be a possibility.
Exactly. Yeah.
And part of coursework and doing research too, part of the archaeology program is doing a senior thesis or a senior project to sort of cap off your education. And what did you do for your thesis, and sort of what was that experience like? Did you take anything from it that you were inspired by later in graduate school?
Yeah, actually. So I did what was the actual title? It was solar alignments of the ritual structures of Neolithic Orkney, I think. And so the Orkney is a archipelago of islands off the northeast coast of Scotland. And so it was looking at kind of more that very early Neolithic period on lots of burial monuments, and there's always a lot of discussion about how things were astronomically aligned and things like that. And so I I did a very now looking back, I mean, it was still digital in what I was doing. It was more of a landscape kind of approach, but it was with AutoCAD, which that's quite basic now looking back. Instead of I didn't
Still
have the
important to
experience.
learn though, especially as you're
Yeah.
just doing a first big research project.
Yeah.
Good
So
to know
it
programming
was
that.
all those decisions you make, and then you look back and you're like, oh, I probably would have done it differently now, but that's just solidifying that I've grown more. So that's fine. So yeah, it was really interesting. Yeah, like I said, still digital. And so I kind of found out early that digital and kind of data-based sort of approaches were kind of my wheelhouse. So set me up for later.
Oh, excellent. And so you worked at Fort McCoy for a few years after graduating. And what spurred you to take that leap into graduate school? We know it's a lot of work, it's a big decision. You went abroad for it.
So I really enjoyed working at Fort McCoy because you get all of that phase 1 and phase 2 excavation experience. And while there were a lot of negative test holes, you would also find lots of really interesting things. And one of those things was a biface cache that my dig partner Chris and I found, which was really
Oh,
exciting.
wow.
Yeah, you don't really find that very often. So that kind of set the bar a little too high for archaeological discoveries for me to make. But I really wanted to kind of do something digital and kind of find something that was more my kind of wheel. Like I really enjoyed the whole Neolithic Orkney thing. But then I had applied to a couple of grad schools fresh out of graduating undergrad, and had a couple options, and actually got in contact with my now colleague Kenny Brophy, who he had said basically, well, we don't have a master's degree specific to Neolithic things in Scotland, but we do have this Celtic and Viking archaeology master's. The standard master's in archaeology is more for people who are coming from other fields and things, and so maybe you'd enjoy doing that. And so that was what I did after that, and obviously really enjoyed my time there, and so much so that I came back. So it was great.
And what sort of research did you get into then pursuing your PhD and working in those interests in digital archaeology?
So backtracking slightly, during the master's degree, I made a lot of great connections with the staff at University of Glasgow, and one in particular became my PhD supervisor later, Stephen Driscoll. And so Professor Driscoll and I had discussed doing a PhD. It took a couple different forms when we were first talking about it, right when I was finishing the master's and graduating, about ready to head back home. And so we had talked about it a lot. And then he had said, well, how do you feel about digital stuff? I'm like, yes, I do enjoy digital things. And he's like, how about 3D imaging? And I'm like, I have no idea how to do 3D modeling. Like, okay, we'll put a pin in that and come back to it later. So then I went back to Fort McCoy at that point and worked there as in the field, and then in the lab, and then supervising and writing reports and things. So
You getting more of that field experience with phase 1s, doing the surveys, shovel testing, that sort of thing, and phase 2, digging formal units and exploring kind of extensive sites, that sort of thing.
yeah, and then working with the stuff in the lab, which was really amazing, and then getting to supervise, actually, which was very rewarding, and getting to actually write up the site reports and things like that, which was great. But then, of course, I think it was at the end of my supervisory, I only did it for about, I think maybe a little longer than 6 months. But at that point, I had found out that I had been accepted for the PhD at Glasgow, and I'd gotten funding to do it as well. And so then I had to finish up writing the reports and things, and then jetted off to Scotland again. Yeah, so during the PhD, I learned how to do 3D imaging and worked with Steve on the Govan stones. And so those are early medieval, kind of like 9th to 11th century AD sculpture. So it's after most elites have sort of converted to Christianity and things. And so they're putting that big old statement in stone. And so looking at how basically the PhD was looking at how 3D imaging, like photogrammetry, can be used to analyze these stones and make direct comparisons and work out different patterns that a lot of them are quite eroded at Govan because they've been well loved or walked over or weathered by all the rain. And so the 3D imaging brought a lot of that lost detail back. So that gave us more information for a lot of the assemblage there.
Great. And eventually you transitioned into a postdoc position, working with 3D imaging and analysis. So what's that like now? What is kind of a typical day like for you?
Well, it's quite different now. So ogham is this early medieval script. So it's about 4th century AD is when we think the earliest kind of dated ones are coming out. But it's a script that shows up after the Romans have been in Britain, and it seems that it is designed specifically for Old Irish, basically. And so using that script, they've put it on lots of like stone sculpture and things, and it kind of changes through time. It's also inscribed on small artifacts and things. And so as a postdoc, what I do is a lot of this stuff has been taken into museums, although there are quite a few stone sculpture or pillars and things still out in the landscape. So we'll design a fieldwork schedule. Like we went out to Aberdeenshire because a lot of them are still outside or easily accessible in kind of small exhibitions and kind of community centers and things, or historical sites. And so we will go out. I'll take my trusty camera and pole and tripod and take lots and lots and lots of photos of these stones. Spend lots of time in the fresh air, taking way too many photos, and then taking it back.
So for those who like aren't
Oh,
familiar
sorry.
with photogrammetry or other,
Yeah.
oh, no worries, who aren't familiar with 3D imaging or photogrammetry, what is kind of what can give us a sense of the number of pictures you're taking and just the amount of data you're
Yeah.
working with for that? Are you
Yeah.
getting all angles or as many angles as you can of these objects, stones, and artifacts that you're photographing?
So that's what the pole is for, because a lot of these stones out in Aberdeenshire and up in Inverness, a lot of them are these Pictish stones, and a lot of them are quite tall, like over 2 meters tall in a lot of cases. And so you do have to have, it's basically like, you know, how construction workers will have this camera pole thing so that they can actually measure things or record things that you can't quite see. But anyway, in terms of photographs, it all depends on the size of the object. And so some of those stones, actually up in Inverness, I would take about 700 to 1,000 photographs of the same stone. Photogrammetry works. Basically, you need the overlap between sets of photographs, and then the software can process out, okay, I can see this and this in these two photos, so they are positioned here, and then it can keep generating based on that. And so yeah, it takes a while to process a lot of these things, but after it works out where all the cameras were when those pictures were taken, it can then generate the actual surface of the stone, or a lot of the small artifacts I've done. We have like little knife handles, so you need a whole new set of kit for that, macro lenses and things. And recently I recorded the Ennis bead, which is actually an amber bead that is in the British Museum, but it's from Ireland, but has a little inscription on it as well. And so it's a lot of traveling, taking lots of photos in a short period of time, processing those, and well, going home and processing those properly is basically my workflow. Yeah.
Oh, fascinating. And what sorts of things is the OHM project trying to figure out with the script and, you know, the point of recording all of these?
Well, so ogham is quite a interesting script in that it starts in the 4th century specifically for like Old Irish speakers, or even primitive Irish, I should say, the earlier version of the Irish language. And it doesn't really stop being used. It's very interesting in that you have lots of, like, you have these stone pillars, which seem to be more of a kind of a statement of ownership or things like boundaries and things like that. And then it kind of goes into, it gets picked up by other groups of people. So you have it initially kind of in like the southeast corner of Ireland, and also in Wales, which they're all bilingual, and they have like a Latin inscription and ogham inscription. What's that about? And so that's one of the questions we have. And then as you keep going through time, kind of it spreads all throughout Ireland. They're all over the place. And then Scotland picks it up. And so you start seeing it in really weird ways. And so whether that is Pictish language kind of picking it up and adapting it for themselves, or if there's something else weird going on, you find it. I think Scotland has a few, well, there are a few examples of kind of knife handles and things. So are those elite people that are doing that, or is it not so elite? Like how widely is literacy spread at this time? Then the Vikings pick it up and they start doing interesting stuff as well. And then after that ends up being part of, well, throughout all this, it's part of Irish kind of learning throughout the whole thing. And so it keeps going into manuscripts. So it transfers from being a 3D script on the side of a stone, or on the corner of the stone is how it originally is written. And then it gets adapted into manuscript form, and they have to come up with new letters because they're learning, well, they're translating things from Latin and things like that. And so they have to come up with new letters, and it all just kind of changes. It keeps going, kind of this manuscript tradition, and kept in all these books, and you can get a much better eloquent explanation on our project website. Because Deborah Hayden's work on the manuscript stuff has been great. And then there's a weird, like, kind of resurgence of using ogham as kind of a cryptographic sort of like way of not telling, well, you have to be in the know to be able to read this book, sort of thing. And then there's a whole book written in the 1850s by someone called the Minchin Manuscript. And so it's just all written in ogham, and I'm not entirely sure why, but it's all very interesting. It's interesting for such a niche script to be so long-lived. And so there's trying to get all of it into one place has been kind of the aim of the entire project, so that we can actually compare them side by side, be like, how is this different from this? How is this the same? What's going on here? So.
Wow, fascinating. Lots of questions, and you're helping to generate those answers. Very cool.
Fingers crossed.
Yes. So looking back now, how did your experience at UWL play into what you did later, what you did now? Were there skills and methods you picked up and were able to sharpen later? Is there anything too that you wish you had learned at UWL that you think would have helped you later on?
Well, I kind of had a steep learning curve. I did some GIS later on in the master's, and I kind of wish I had actually gone that sort of route in during undergrad, but you can pick it up, so it's okay. But it would have been better to have that early on, I think. So highly recommend. I also wish I had taken a bit more geology now that I'm working with a bunch of stone sculpture, but that's that anyway. Otherwise, I mean, what UWL prepared me for was one course that really helped me was research methods with Dr. Anderson. That was really helpful in that it kind of made statistics not so terrifying, at least for me. And kind of having an idea of how to use statistics in a useful way, because obviously if you're using statistics in biology, it's a bit more important to have 99.5% certainty than it is for interpreting archaeology, and I think that's quite useful.
Were there any more general life skills or kind of like ways you see archaeology sort of working their way into your life, not just professionally, but like, oh, when you go on vacation somewhere, do you sort of see things differently when you see old buildings or maybe are able to visit an archaeological site or a historical site?
Yeah, I would say that I look at archaeological sites differently after having done UWL's archaeology program, especially compared to little Megan of high school trip to Stonehenge. I definitely have a much wider appreciation for where a lot of the information that they kind of display comes from. And I think one of the things that, looking back, when you're trying to decide which bit of archaeology you want to go into, what you kind of realize is that archaeology is the study of people. And so that's such a wide topic. And so basically, if you're interested in kind of society, there are different aspects you can kind of get at, and there's something there for everybody. And whatever interests you might have. And it's just working out what kind of methodology you'd be interested in using to get to that point, and furthering your career if that's what you want to do in archaeology.
Yeah, pulling in everything from digital technology to studying seeds underneath a microscope.
Or not.
There's so many different things that archaeologists go into, and that, touches on chemistry and, geology and all these different fields.
Yeah, definitely.
So to cap things off here, do you have any recommendations for current or prospective students, those coming in right after high school, or maybe even non-traditional students coming in later in life?
I would say use this as an opportunity to work out what it is that you enjoy deep down about different kinds of approaches. So obviously digital has been a strong thread through mine. And there are other things that, I mean, I ruled things out. You try different things, volunteering, you try different classes. This is the time to decide what it is. Well, you don't have to decide. You can always change direction later on, but work out what it is at a base level, what you enjoy about certain types of things, and what sort of questions you're most interested in finding out. Because it is a wide subject area. You can get into environmental stuff and look at climate change. You can look at you can look at tiny beads and how they're manufactured. You can look at scripts and languages and things like that. And so it's the human experience. And so whichever kind of facet you're most interested in, work towards the tools you'll need to pursue that later on.
Yeah, looking at the full depth and breadth of the human experience and the myriad ways we can explore that. And it's been exciting to hear about the work you're doing in that regard today. So again, thank you so much for joining us, Megan.
Thanks so much for having me, Cindy. It's been great.
And thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you want to find out more about archaeological topics, find out more about MVAC, look at events and information on different types of artifacts, especially those from the upper Midwest, you can check out the MVAC website at uwlax.edu/MVAC.